Alicia here. Welcome to your yoga class. Today's class is going to be yin yoga for anxious thoughts. And if you're watching this, you're probably experiencing some anxiety right now. And I totally get how uncomfortable it is. I used to suffer from debilitating, crippling anxiety that imprisoned me for years. So I know how bad it can get. I know how uncomfortable it is. So in this class, the reason that we're doing yin is because sometimes, most of the time, when we are really anxious and really in our heads, we completely forget about the body. We will throw ourselves into doing all of the things and really busying ourselves. Sometimes we will micromanage ourselves or other people. Sometimes we will completely freeze and just get stuck in kind of numbing out, either with substances, alcohol, with TV, with food, or something else, and it feels like you just can't move forward. You might even find yourself saying, gosh, I just feel so stuck. Another thing that you can do is actually revert into overly people-pleasing and trying to serve other people as a way to kind of neglect yourself and what's going on within. And so we're actually going to drop out of the minds for this practice. We're going to drop into the bodies. You've probably done all of the thinking that you can and more. And sometimes, a lot of the times, you can't think your way through healing. Yeah, it can be helpful to vent. It can be helpful to process, to distract. And sometimes what you got to do is to feel your way through healing. So attending to the body, what does this feel like in the body? We already know, it's super uncomfortable. And so that might be why there's that tendency to distract, to escape, to avoid. But instead, we're going to be welcoming that feeling of anxiety, but in the body, out of the heads, into the body. I'll explain it more when we get into it. If you are interested in connecting with me or just seeing a little bit more of what I do, please check me out on Instagram at Alicia Hurley. I'll put that in the description below. And if you're interested in working with a coach on a one-on-one basis, I actually specialize in trauma. Even more specifically, I specialize in complex trauma or complex PTSD. And I also am really big on navigating spiritual awakening. So if you're interested in working with me, I do have a coaching program where we go into mindfulness and really taking control of the mind so that the mind doesn't control you. Being able to learn how to use emotions, especially really intense emotions, as tools. Again, instead of letting them take the driver's seat and constantly controlling your life. Being able to learn how to manage distress and crisis with effectiveness, with ease, and in a way that actually aligns with who you really are and your values, as well as learning how to navigate interpersonal relationships in a way that serves you, in a way where you are nurturing, building, maintaining healthy relationships, and being able to walk away from relationships that are potentially harmful, destructive, and just not for your greatest and highest good. There's a lot in that program. That's just a really quick overview. We also process trauma and we do it in a somatic way where we feel through. So I don't want to get into too much of the descriptions, but if you want to check that out or you want to connect with me and ask me a couple questions, again, see the description below the video. All right, I think that's enough of an intro. One quick thing, all you'll need for the class is a pillow. You don't absolutely want it or you don't absolutely need it, but if you want it, it can just help you find a little bit more comfort as we make our way through the discomfort, right? So this is gonna be a gentle class. I mean, for the most part, some intense emotions might come up and that's not always very gentle, but we're gonna be gentle with the body. We're gonna ease into each pose. We're gonna hold each pose for a few minutes. That's the whole point of yin yoga. And so some stuff might come up and I invite you to just invite it in. Be like, hey, I see you, anxiety. Hey, I see you. Hey, I'm noticing you worry thoughts. I notice it all, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Let's be here. Sometimes all you need to do in order to metabolize an emotion is to feel it fully. Give it your attention and just feel what it feels like to fully feel the feeling. All right, I don't want to, what is it called? I'm not even going to say that saying. That just came into my head. Okay, if you're like, what? Just don't worry about what I was about to say. Okay, so 2 options for the first pose. You can either start in caterpillar, which is you will start sitting on the ground, legs extended outward. If you need, you can sit on your pillow, just put it underneath the sit bones like so. You can always fold up a blanket. And this just helps if you find that without the pillow, you're sinking in and it's hard to extend the spine straight. So if you need the pillow underneath your sit bones, no worries. And you're just going to extend the body into a forward fold, folding over the legs. You can grasp onto the feet. You can put the hands down on the ground, yogi's choice. And if you're not sitting on the pillow, you can always use the pillow as a support for your body. And I personally really like this option. And you're just going to forward fold over. You can even hug the pillow in front of you. So that's the first option. You can start there, or you can start in dangling. And it's pretty much exactly what I'm saying. So you can either go into hips width apart with the feet, and to measure hips width, you can ball your hands into fists and measure 2 fists between your feet. Or if you like, my personal preference for this pose is to make the feet wider than hips width. And then you're just going to dangle over the legs. Cross the elbows, or bend the elbows and grab opposite elbows with your hands and just dangle over here. This can get a little intense, which is why I gave caterpillar as another option, the sitting version. Just choose one. If you're like, I don't know which one to choose, go with the standing one. And if it's too intense, then make your way down to caterpillar. And I'm gonna start the timer here. See if you can allow your breath to help you deepen into all of the poses that we get into today. A lot of the times, anxiety will totally take over the nervous system. And when the nervous system isn't regulated, that's typically why we have the tendency to go into our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So either the people-pleasing, the micromanaging, the doing all of the things, or the complete frozen, stuck state. And it's just your body trying to cope with what it's experiencing in the best way it knows how. It's just trying to survive. And so the first step is to start to regulate the nervous system. And one way to do that is through the breath. And so you can take some long, deep breaths throughout the class. I invite you to engage your Ujjayi breath. And if you're like, what the heck is that? You're just breathing kind of like Darth Vader. And if you're like, who the heck is that? Then you can think of like an oceanic breath. So you're just breathing deeply into the nose with a slight constriction in the back of the mouth. It's a really audible breath. And then you breathe that same way out through the nose, an audible breath with a slight constriction in the back of the throat. And something else that can be really helpful for easing out of the sympathetic fight or flight and into the parasympathetic rest, digest, and relax mode is to make your exhales longer than your inhales.
So you can think about maybe breathing in for 3 counts and then exhaling for 5 to 6 counts. So inhale, 2, 3. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it doesn't have to be that exact count. That's just an example. And I want you to keep breathing in that way. And as you do, I want you to check in with the body, regardless of whether you're dangling or you are in caterpillar down on the ground. Just check in. What sensations are coming up for you? And maybe it's just like, I just straight up feel anxious. And it's like, okay, what does that feel like? Where in the body do you feel that? And you don't need to describe it in terms of it feels like this. I just want you to, when I ask you that question, I mean feel it out. Like literally invite it in. Like, okay, this is, I'm sensing, I'm noticing this overwhelming feeling. Okay, what does it feel like? Let's invite this in. Hello, anxiety. I'm gonna allow you to be here. What's up? How you doing? This is what you feel like. Oh wow, okay, this is a little uncomfortable. All right, I'm here for it. And just keep breathing. All right, we're going to start to move out of the pose. So if you are down in caterpillar, you can start to walk yourself up your legs. And actually, same thing if you are dangling. Hopefully you could, oh yeah, I was talking really quiet. I was like, whoa, that was weird. Just start to, if you're dangling, you can start to walk yourself up your legs as well. Yeah. And then just going to come down to the mat for a rebound pose. And a rebound pose can be anything you want. For this one, I'm just going to lean back onto my hands, and you can do the same. And I just want you to feel the energy in your body. Notice where you might feel any vibrations, any strange sensations. Maybe you feel some tingles in the body. There's nothing wrong with that. That's totally normal. That's actually your life force energy. That is your prana, your chi moving through the body. So just be with it. Where is it? Where do you feel it in the body? You might even feel a little bit of heat. And just notice it. Be totally present with it. And it's the same concept that we apply whenever we feel a really intense emotion, including anxiety. Like, okay, what does this feel like? Where do I feel it? And I'm just going to be totally present with it. I'm going to give it my attention without coming up with a story, without overthinking, just dropping into the body. What does this feel like? Okay, now we're going to go into dragon pose. So you can come onto hands and knees and bring the right foot forward onto the mat. So I like to have my hands on the inside of my right foot, and then the left leg is going to extend back behind you, and you're going to kind of sink the hips without totally just releasing into it. Still keep it kind of strong here in terms of you might, this is a really good cue if you're really flexible and you have the tendency to just want to like fall into the pose, like, hi, that's me. And if you're not flexible, you're like, that doesn't apply to me, then it's cool, don't worry about that. So you're just gonna want to keep it strong, but also we're getting a good stretch here into the left hip flexor, into the right hamstring, into the right hip flexor as well. There's a lot going on here. And so just be with it. Notice anything that's coming up. We're going to be getting a lot into the hips today, mostly because I'm feeling called to it and because my body really wants it. But also, the hips, we store a lot in the hips. And
repressed emotions, especially repressed memories. And so I always feel like it's a good one to get into, especially getting into the hips has helped me tremendously with my trauma healing journey, with my anxiety healing journey. The two were linked for me, extremely so. So that's why I talk about trauma in here too, because maybe you've got some trauma. I think the majority of us do. And anyway, we're not gonna go down that rabbit hole right now, but dropping into the body, of course. And remember to keep breathing. Keep that ujjayi breath up. If you want to explore with this pose, there are some variations that you can do to get into a little bit of a deeper expression. So you can take your right hand and you can put it onto your thigh. You can pivot the foot so that the toes are facing out just outside of the right corner of your mat, like in that direction. You want to make sure your knee is going in the same direction as your toes. And you can open up the hip a little bit here and then open up the chest so that it's facing toward the right side of the mat, and open it up towards the sky a bit here as you push away the right thigh, the right knee. I feel an immense opening in my right and in my left. Oh my gosh, I'm loving this. You can also go to the outside edge of your right foot, just to open up a little bit more. And if you're like, girl, that is way too intense, that's cool. Just keep it where you were before. Another option is to drop down into lizard pose. So you just bring the forearms down to the mat. Make sure to be with the body. And when I say that, notice all of the sensations coming up. Notice any discomfort that you may feel. And try not to suppress it. Try not to tighten the body. See if you can allow the exhales to take you deeper, to help you soften, to help you release, and to help you stay fully present with whatever it is that's coming up for you right now. No avoiding, no attaching, just allowing. That's the key here. And you can stay here if you want to try one more thing. Again, this is just an option, and this may not be accessible to everyone, and that's okay, but you just bend that left back knee, and you pull the left foot, catch it with your right hand, and pull it in towards your butt, towards your bum. And if you can't quite reach that left foot, and if you're like, this is way too intense, you can always use a towel or something to wrap around your foot to help you pull it in. But if you're just like, no, Alicia, no, not today, then that's cool. Honor that. That's awesome. That's totally chill. My body is asking for this, so I'm going to honor that. What is your body asking for? How can you honor that? Continuing to breathe with that ujjayi breath. Regardless of the variation that you are in, we're going to start to move out of the pose. Just take one more cycle of breath. And allow the exhale to help you release. So if you've got that foot, slowly release that left foot back down to the mat. And then ease out of the pose. So you're just going to bring the right leg back to meet the left. Open up the knees, bring the feet together behind you. Hands are extended out in front of you, and drop into a child's pose as the rebound pose. And just check in with the body. Notice any sensations that are arising. Notice any heat, notice any tingles.
Maybe you don't notice anything, and that's okay too. But just try to see if anything is coming up. And if nothing's coming up, that's okay. And maybe it's still just that really overwhelming feeling of anxiety. And if that's the case, which most likely it is, just be with it. Hey, this is uncomfortable. This sucks. And that's okay. And you don't need to go into the head. You don't need to plan. Allow yourself to be here. Allow yourself to take a break from the mind for a little bit. What does this feel like in the body? All right, let's take dragon on the opposite side. Dragon, or one of the many variations that I gave. So you're just going to bring the left foot forward. Hands are going to be on the inside of that left leg. Right leg is stretched out behind you. And you're just going to start to bring the hips forward toward the mat. And you may notice, especially if you are more on the flexible side, I have really wide or open hips. And by the way, you don't need to be flexible to do yoga. And in fact, if you are on the more flexible side, it actually makes yoga a little bit more challenging because you have to build up a lot more strength so that you're not just collapsing into the poses, and you can do them strong. And that's the thing here. This can be a really tempting pose to just collapse into. And I know I always feel it. Like, I love deep stretches. So if you are feeling called to like open it up just a little bit more, go ahead and pivot out the left foot so it's facing toward the outside edge of the mat. Make sure that knee is always in line with the toes, regardless of where your foot placement is. And again, you've got options here. You can stay here. You can you can bring your left hand to the left knee and thigh and open up the chest, open up the hips a little bit more. You can even roll onto the outside edge of that left foot. You can stay here. You've got another option to come down to the forearms, onto the elbows for lizard pose. And then you've got one more option. If you know what it is, you're welcome to go into it now, but I am going to give it in just a couple of minutes, because the whole point of yin too is not to wiggle around too much. It's to find the place that feels okay and good enough for your body to sit in for, however long we're going to be in it, without any pain. Yes, there will likely be some discomfort. To try and find some comfort in the discomfort, and then to sit with everything that's coming up. And to notice the urge to wiggle, to move, to scratch your nose, to play with your hair, to switch from variation to variation to variation, to completely ditch the pose and be like, okay, I'm done, this is too much. Like, It's that yearn to want to avoid. And so how can you just notice it and be fully present for it? Even welcome it. Like, hey, I see you. What up? Welcome. Come sit at the table. What do you want to drink? You want some lemonade? You want some water? What do you want? I'm here for you. All right, now I'm going to give that last variation. So if you took it on the other side and you want to do it again, go for it. And that's just to bend the back knee and to pull in that right foot with the left hand. And again, if this is too much and you're like, heck no, I don't even know, like you're crazy, cool, don't do it. You don't got to do it today. You never got to do it if you don't want to. But if you're like, yeah, that's amazing, then go for it. And just, again, be with the sensations. Be with the body. Keep that deep breath going on. That deep Ujjayi breath. See if you can make those exhales longer than the inhales. Take one more cycle of breath. Make sure you're not sinking into the shoulder here. So notice the difference between this and this. Pushing away the mat. All right, and start to move out of the pose. Gently, slowly swing that left leg back to meet the right, and you're just gonna take yourself back into a child's pose, the rebound pose. Notice where in the body you feel any sensations, any tingles, any heat, any energy. And just notice that. Take one more cycle of breath here. All right, start to come up onto all fours. And you're just gonna bring your hips down to the mat, down to one side. You can swing your legs over. And you're actually gonna keep your left leg, your left knee down on the mat. You can be facing the front of your mat, the side of your mat, it doesn't matter. I'm just facing the camera so that you can see me as clearly as possible. You're gonna bring the right leg over the left first shoelace. So the left, both knees are facing in front of you, going to the middle of whichever side of the mat you're facing. And it can be helpful to have your pillow nearby if you'd like it. You don't necessarily need it for this pose, but of course, you can have it handy if you want. So this one can be really intense. I know for me, this can get super intense. So just welcome all of it, okay? So you're just gonna start to bring yourself down into the mat. And just one thing too, it can be more intense if you have your legs like more parallel with the front edge of the mat, but you can also bring those heels and tuck them in. And you can play with it, what feels better for you today, and just go there, honor that. Okay, and when you're ready, deep inhale. Exhale, start to forward fold over the knees. And you can bring the head to curl down. And so I guess the pillow, actually wouldn't recommend using the pillow unless you've got like maybe 2 or 3, or you can fold it and then you can rest your forehead down onto the pillow. Just an option, but you don't need it. If you're not feeling it, you don't need it. Just put the pillow to the side. And notice any urges that come up. Notice urges to go into your head and to start to overthink, to start to plan about whatever you're going to do next, to start to ruminate the past, or about the past, to maybe micromanage yourself in terms of how did you do something wrong, how can you do better, how are things not quite perfect. Avoid, just notice the urge to want to overthink and to go back into the brain. And try to bring yourself back to the breath and back into the body. If you are noticing any discomfort, be with it, allow it, welcome it. What does that discomfort feel like? How can you be totally present with it? See if you can breathe into the discomfort that you may be experiencing right now. Like, notice where in the body you feel that discomfort, and then try to focus your breath into that area, as though when you breathe, you're directing that oxygen into that discomfort. You're sending it right there. On your next inhale, you're going to start to come up off of the legs. Moving slowly, moving gently. Ooh. Yeah. You might notice that the hips or the groin feels really tight, and if that's the case, just move with so much gentleness and ease, and you can help yourself by moving the legs. So we're going to come into a rebound pose. So come to lay on the back, keep the knees bent, and you're going to let the knees fall in towards one another. The feet are wide, toes are pointing in towards each other, heels are faced out toward the long edges of the mat. And feel into the body. Where do you feel any sensations, any tingles, any heat? That's your life force. It's your chi. Be totally present with all of the sensations that you are noticing in the body. You don't need to come up with a story about them. You don't need to know why they feel so intense. You just need to know. You just need to notice that they're there and give them your presence. Welcome them. All right, start to come back up onto the bum. This time we're going to take fire log pose, and then we're going to do all of it on the other side, or both poses on the other side. So for fire log, you're going to do the same leg on top that you did the last time. So if your right leg was on top, bring it on top. Left leg is on bottom. So right ankle is over left knee, right knee is over left ankle. And notice I said right ankle, not your right foot. Okay, so shins are parallel, right ankle. So the foot is going to be hanging off the side here. Don't just like let it fall. Get a nice flex into that foot just to help protect the joints. And then similarly to the other pose, we're going to take it into a forward fold. And again, this one can be a little intense, okay? So just be with it. It's probably no more intense than your anxiety. Like nothing's more intense than that anxiety can get. Am I right? Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness gracious. So just forward fold into this pose. You can use your hands to support you here. So you might not feel like you can totally collapse over this because this might be really intense on the hips. Oh, I need to mention, if you've got a gap, a significant gap between your knee and your ankle, you can always put the pillow in between to help support. And you might notice that the longer you're in the pose, that you might not need the pillow, that your hips might open up a little bit more. And if your hips feel really tight, that doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean anything other than the fact that your hips are just tight. You know, it is what it is. Our minds are really good at coming up with stories as to, oh my gosh, I should really be stretching more. I should really be doing yoga more. Oh my gosh, I'm a terrible person. I am not exercising enough. Like, oh my gosh, no, your hips are just tight. Like, and it could have nothing to do with any of those things. And especially if you're already experiencing anxiety, emotions love themselves. Like, I'm going to repeat that for the people in the back. Emotions love themselves. So when you are feeling anxious, your anxiety is going to crave more anxiety. It's going to search for more anxious thoughts. It's going to do things that actually make you more anxious. And so sometimes we have to do the complete opposite of what we're experiencing. So yeah, and you know, sometimes we got to drop into the body. Sometimes we got to do the exact opposite. It's about really learning what works for you in any given moment and being able to learn about different symptoms that you experience and then try different things and notice what helps, what works. Even notice when you start to overuse or, you know, lean on something as though it is a crutch, and be able to diversify. And if you're like, girl, I have no coping skills for that, that's okay. It comes with time and practice and finding the right resources and finding maybe you're just in a space where you're just experiencing it. I know for me, I didn't have coping skills for the longest time. And then when I was finally ready to commit to my healing and commit to myself, I found the resources that I needed. And maybe yoga becomes one of those resources for you. And if it does, oh, that's awesome. I know it's been incremental in helping my own anxiety and helping my own healing journey and helping me to improve all areas of my life and my health and my well-being. And so if it becomes that for you, then heck yes. Remember to breathe. If you've got that pillow underneath your knee, maybe you don't need it. You can play with moving it out of the way. Try not to wiggle too much here. This is like a really intense version of pigeon pose. It's like a double pigeon. It gets really deep into the hips. So it can be bringing up a lot for you. So just allow it. Notice if you're clenching the jaw and see if you can release that jaw. Allow your exhales to help you soften, to help you deepen. Be with everything that's coming up. Take one more cycle of breath. And slowly, very slowly, gently start to ease your way out of the pose. And you might feel really stiff coming out of it. And that's okay. Try not to judge it. Just notice it. Oh my good golly goodness. My hips are tight today, y'all. Like, whoa, that was so intense. All right. We're going to go into a rebound pose. Move as gently and as slowly as you need to. Assist your body if you need to. I know I definitely, my body's like, what the heck are we doing? I love this. And then start to ease your way down into the ground. Take the same rebound pose that you did the last time. So feet are wide, knees together, toes are pointed in towards each other, heels are faced out. Whew. And just feel into the body. Another rebound pose that you can do if you want to try something different. My body's actually wanting me to do something different, so I'm gonna listen to that. Is you can take Supta Baddha Konasana, so just drop the knee. You're gonna bring the feet, the soles of the feet together, like a butterfly pose, but you're just laying down. So the feet are together, the knees fall out wide. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's magic. At least for me. Maybe you're like, what is going on? Why does this feel so good for here? I just really love yin. Yin yoga has easily been incremental in helping me deal with really intense emotions. Like, absolutely amazing. When I first found it, I did it every day for a week. I'm not kidding. And I did this same yoga class every day for a week, like, because it was just magical. And I've actually derived a lot of the poses that I got from that first yin yoga class are actually included into this class. I've added some, I've taken out some, just because I'm actually just doing it with, I'm following what my body needs today, which is a skill that I've honed over time by doing lots of yoga, by dropping into the body and listening to what the body needs and being totally present with my emotions, because the body will always lead you how to heal it. It's just about becoming still enough or being able to like drop in and listen to what the body needs. You're extremely intuitive. You might not feel that way. You might be like, what the heck? I have never been intuitive. At your core, you are. Sometimes the anxiety, the pain, the distress, the really intense emotions, and any suffering that you have endured will cover up that intuition. But I promise you, like I wouldn't lie to you, and I say this from experience and from study, you are intuitive. It is a gift that you have, and it's there. It just needs to be discovered. And it needs to be practiced, right? Like any skill. Everything needs to be practiced. All right, regardless of which restorative pose you are in, we're going to start to move out, and we're going to take those two poses on to the other side. Man, I always am like, okay, I'm going to do a 20-minute class, and then it's like, nope, no way. I'm just feeling it. We're going to go for longer. So, all right, we're going to take shoelace. So this time, if you had the right leg on top for the last two poses, now you're going to bring the left knee on top. The knees will stack over each other, maybe not right on top of each other, but you know, they're pretty close. And then again, the feet can be as far forward or as close to your hips as you want them. You can have your handy dandy pillow handy. Wow, it's okay. We're just gonna go with it. You can have it handy if you need it. Take an inhale. And exhale, start to fold yourself forward over the knees. Yeah, this is looking like it's going to be more of a hour-long class. I was aiming for a half hour, but I just felt, sometimes I just feel called to go longer and to add in poses. Like I didn't think I was going to do the rebound poses, but I'm super glad that I did because my body needs them today. Remember to breathe. You might notice that one side feels more intense than the other. One side feels more flexible than the other, a little bit looser than the other. There's nothing wrong with that. We tend to favor one side of our bodies over the other. And so it's perfectly normal. Nothing's wrong. It's just good to notice. Good to notice. And sometimes you can even like stay in a pose longer on another side if you feel called to just give it a little bit more TLC. And to help even out, balance out the body. You know, I think it's really interesting how in society, when people are going through something really difficult, you will often hear other people say, wow, that person's so strong, especially when they're not showing any emotions. Like maybe there was a death in the family or some sort of tragedy, and it can be literally anything. Like, please be as creative as you want to with, what I'm saying here. And I'm sure you've experienced or noticed this in your life where someone's going through tragedy and someone else sees them not expressing any emotions, not crying, not freaking out when they need to freak out, not screaming, not getting angry. Like they're like totally emotionless, and they're like, wow, that person's so strong. And it creates, and maybe you heard this growing up too, perhaps from parents, guardians, teachers, anything like that. And it starts to create this idea that expressing and feeling emotions is weak, and that the only way to be strong is to hold it all together and to not feel anything. And that's actually
completely backwards. Like, I'm not saying that person who doesn't express themselves isn't strong, but what I am saying is that emotions, feeling your emotions, expressing your emotions, allowing everything to come up is one of the most strongest things that you can do. It requires so much strength to be able to hold space for your emotions, to allow yourself to feel everything coming up, to allow yourself to express, to emote whenever you need to cry when you need to cry, to scream when you need to scream, to, talk to God, why is this happening? Letting it out. It's so powerful, and it requires so much courage. It requires so much bravery. It requires so much strength. And expressing, owning your emotions, using them as the tools that they were meant to be, is not weak. It is so strong, and it will create more resilience within you. It will create more wisdom within you, and it will create a greater level of emotional intelligence within you. It's like society really has this backwards, and I need you to know that it's okay to feel your feelings. It's okay. In fact, the only way to transmute those feelings, to metabolize those feelings, to lessen the intensity of those feelings and all of those emotions is to fully feel them. That's the only way. That is the only way. Research shows that avoiding emotions only makes them stronger, more intense, and more persistent. Make sure you're still breathing, by the way. There's this saying, and if you want to use it as a mantra, I highly recommend it, and it's, what you resist persists. What you resist persists. And so that's why I'm having you welcome all of it. We are allowing, we are not avoiding, we are not attaching. Take one more cycle of breath here. And start to slowly and gently bring yourself up off of those legs. Oh my goodness. If you need to aid yourself in unwinding yourself out of the pose, go for it. I'm feeling called to lay on the mat the opposite way this time, so you don't have to. You can do whatever you want here, but just make your way back down to the back for the rebound pose. And for this one, we're going to take the constructive rest pose. So bring the knees in towards each other, feet are wide, toes face in, heels are out toward the outside edges of the mat. Oh my goodness. Wow, I'm feeling there's some really intense sensations in this on this side for me. Like, whoa. So you may notice the same. For you, it might have been the opposite. Maybe you felt a little bit more intensity on the other side. And there's nothing wrong with that. Every body is different. Every experience is different. We are biochemically different humans. We're wired differently. Yes, we have so many similarities, and we're all unique. Breathe. Feel into the body. What are you noticing? What are you feeling? Where are those sensations located within you?
take one more cycle of breath. And on the exhale, start to bring yourself up off of the mat. We're going to take the fire log pose on the opposite side. Yep, we're going to do about an hour long today. So hopefully you're here for it. Hopefully you saw the length of the class before you clicked on the class, so you knew what to expect coming in. I never know what to expect coming in as a teacher, although I do know that I'm probably going to go over the time that I initially came up with in my brain. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. That's just how I work. All right, so again, you want the shins to be parallel with one another. You want your left ankle on top of your right knee on top of your left knee on top of your right ankle. If there's that gap there between the knee and the ankle, then you can go ahead and put a pillow or a block or something between the two body parts. All right, I was like, what do I want to call this? I almost said ligaments, I almost said joints. Okay, you don't need to know my internal thinking. Sometimes I share. And take an inhale. Exhale, start to bring yourself forward onto the legs. Oh my goodness, golly graciousness, what the heck? I know I'm coming up with words here. My hips are freaking tight today, like holy moly. I went for a run yesterday for the first time in a while. Usually I do high intensity, the HIIT workouts on Mondays, but I was like, nah, I really feel like running. My body was just like aching for it. My soul was like, please. So I'm just a little sore in some areas that, like more sore, especially in my hips. Like, whoa, I was kind of surprised. Make sure you're flexing that left foot and make sure you're breathing. Make sure you are fully feeling into the body. Notice any urges to want to wiggle, to want to scratch your face, play with your hair, shift from left to right. Notice the urge. Just because you're noticing the urge doesn't mean you need to act on the urge. You're just noticing it. Staying with the breath. Notice if your jaw is clenched tight. And if it is, go ahead and see if you can relax it a little bit. See if you can unclench it. See if your exhales can take you a little deeper. And if you do notice, I've been meaning to say this, and I had so many things that I wanted to mention that I kept forgetting. But if at any point your thoughts are coming up, especially because we're getting closer to the end of the class, and you're like maybe feeling that urge to go back into the anxious thinking, just notice. Just notice them. Maybe they do arise, and you're like, hey, that's an anxious thought. Maybe you also notice, hey, that's not a thought that I want to have right now. I don't really feel like going down that rabbit hole, so I'm just going to notice it, and I'm going to return my attention back to the breath and back to the body. And also, I just really want to say here, too, the thoughts that you have when you're anxious are often not truth. Often those thoughts are not telling you the truth. A lot of the times those thoughts are coming from your inner critic or perhaps your outer critic. The inner critic is the voice inside of your head that constantly judges you, that constantly points out everything that you're doing wrong, in all of the ways in which you still need to improve, all of the ways you suck. Like, it's a really harsh voice. The outer critic is that voice that pops up whenever you're criticizing someone else or judging someone else. And you might notice that your inner critic is louder. You might notice that your outer critic tends to be louder. There's no right or wrong here. And you also might notice that as you heal and progress along your journey, that
One voice is stronger than the other voice. But in any case, that inner critic, that outer critic, usually a proxy of one of your parents or both of your parents growing up, meaning it's just a reflection of maybe the way that they used to talk to you or treat you. But that voice isn't speaking truth. It's not. So whenever you notice the anxious thoughts, see if you can identify them as that's an anxious thought. That's a thought from my inner critic. That's a thought from my outer critic. And that thought isn't true. It's not true. Yep, sometimes the inner critic and the outer critic can protect us. Sometimes it can be helpful. So again, this takes some training. This takes some discernment. This takes a lot of getting to know oneself, a lot of inner work. But over time, you'll be able to identify this is helpful, this is unhelpful. This is true, this is untrue. Take one more cycle of breath. And slowly start to come up out of the pose as gently and as slowly as you need. If you can see my face right now, you know, like if that was intense for you, like I am with you, okay? Like these poses have been just as intense for me. Like I can't feel, I don't know if I can move. No, I know I can. I'm just gotta move really slowly and gently. I'm gonna assist my legs out of the pose because like, yo, that was intense. And then come back down into the rebound pose. And I recommend that you take the same rebound pose that you did on the other side after fire log. So maybe your knees are together, maybe they drop out wide into a Supta Baddha Konasana. And if you've got that pillow nearby, you can always rest your head on the pillow as you lay down. Feel free to as well put your hands on your body. That will help to establish, to really bolster the connection that you have with yourself. And you can put your hands anywhere on your body. Maybe you place them onto your belly, onto your hips, onto your heart, onto your thighs. They can go anywhere that you want. It is your body, and they are your hands, and you are allowed to touch your body. You are allowed to connect with your body. You are allowed to be fully present with your body. Notice any and all sensations coming up. Man, I'm not gonna lie, I really want to do like 3 more poses, but we are coming up quick on 60 minutes here, like just a couple seconds away. So if you have extra time, I am gonna suggest a pose. You can stay here if you want to like turn your head and look at the camera really quick while I explain, go for it. One of the biggest pose that I'm feeling called to do, we're not going to do it in this class together, so if you want to do it on your own, you can always pause the video and take some time to do it really quick. But that's to go into dragonfly, which your legs are just out wide in a straddle. You can have them as wide as you would like or as closed in as you'd like. It's yin, so really listen to your body here and listen, because some of us are more flexible than others, some of us are tighter than others, so just be with where your body is at. And so you're just going to put the legs out wide into a straddle, and then you're going to walk yourself forward into the pose. You can stay up on hands, you can come down to elbows, you can cross hands and bring forehead to rest onto the hands. You want to keep the feet flexed. You want the knees and the toes to be in line with one another and ideally pointed up towards the sky. I have a really flexy body, so
I'm not going to explain that because we're not going to do the pose together here, but if this feels like a pose that you might want to explore, I highly, highly recommend it. Again, like my hips are just really calling for some TLC, so that's why I feel so called to share that one. So if you want to take it, pause me, do it. And then the last pose we're going to take, you can either take regular Shavasana and just, you can use your pillow this time and just lay in Shavasana with the legs out wide. The toes will fall out, heels will be in, hands will face up towards the sky. You can even bring the shoulder blades in toward one another to open up the heart a little bit more for traditional Shavasana or corpse pose. Or you can do legs up the wall or legs in the air. So if you don't have a wall, all you do is you bring the legs up like this. And you can have a micro bend in the knees. You can place a pillow underneath the hips if you would like to. Totally up to you, yogi's choice. I do recommend the pillow under the hips. So if you've only got one pillow, I would put it under the hips. You can have one pillow under the head too, if you'd like. If you've got a wall, you can move yourself up to the wall and bring the hips, I'm just gonna show it. Bring the hips as close as possible to the wall. Grabbing all my things. Bring the legs up, hips as close as possible to the wall, and you just chill here. This is awesome, this pose, whether you are away from the wall or against the wall. If you've got a chair too, you can also bring the chair to the thighs and rest the legs over the seat of the chair. You got lots of options, and you're just gonna chill here. Again, if you want, regardless of whichever variation you're in, whether you're in Shavasana, legs in the air, legs up the wall, legs on a chair, if you want to forge that connection with self a little bit more, you can put the hands on the body. You can place them wherever you want. I would recommend one hand on heart, one hand on belly. It's a safe hold. It helps communicate to the body that you're here for it, that you're safe, that you're wanting to forge a connection here. And go ahead, if you haven't already, go ahead and close the eyes. You can release the controlled breath. And be with the body for just a couple more minutes. Feel into any sensations that you're noticing in the body. And do a check-in. How do you feel now compared to when you first got on your mat? Maybe you're feeling a little less anxious. Maybe you're feeling a lot less anxious. Maybe you're like, nope, the anxiety is still pretty heavy, but we're getting through it, and I feel a little bit more stable. You know, whatever it is, I hope that the anxiety has eased, even if it's just a little bit. And if anything, I also hope that you were able to get out of the mind for the last hour and just drop into the body. And again, you might have noticed the urge to go back into the mind, to entertain those anxious thoughts. But hopefully you were able to keep bringing yourself back to the breath and back to the body. And know that this is a practice. So if this is the very first time you're hearing any of this kind of information in regard to anxiety, to emotions, to feeling through things instead of thinking through things, know that it's going to be the hardest the first time you try it. And it will get easier with time. And it will, if you practice enough, become second nature. And I want to leave you with a little excerpt from a book that I just finished reading. It's so good. I highly recommend it if you have had any kind of trauma in your life, or especially, well, not any kind of trauma. If you have had any experiences with abusive parents, with
parents who, and that can be emotional abuse, mental, spiritual. It doesn't just have to be physical or sexual abuse. All of the types of abuse count. It's also really good if your parents have ever made you feel like your emotions don't matter. Maybe they neglected you or abandoned you at times. And maybe you find that you're frequently really dysregulated. This might be a good book to check out. It's called Complex PTSD: From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. He also wrote the book The Tao of Fully Feeling. All right, so I'm just going to read a little quick thing. One of the perfectionism attacks that we do, that the inner critic, I talked about that earlier, does, is it will micromanage, it will worry, it will obsess, it will loop, and it will over-futurize. And that's really goes hand in hand with anxious thoughts a lot of the time. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. And so I want you to just listen to this. It's a little bit of an affirmation, something to tell yourself to help you deal with this kind of anxiety thought attack. Okay, and it is: I will not repetitively examine details over and over. I will not endlessly second guess myself. I cannot change the past. I forgive all of my past mistakes. I cannot make the future perfectly safe. I will stop hunting for what could go wrong. I will not try to control the uncontrollable. I will not micromanage myself or others. I work in a way that is good enough. And I accept the existential fact that my efforts sometimes bring desired results and sometimes they do not. And then it ends with the serenity prayer. And if you are a person of faith, regardless of whatever your spirituality looks like, you can always replace this first word of God for Allah, for Buddha, for universe, for spirit, for source, whatever fits your fancy. But I'm going to read it as it wasn't originally written, and that is: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. We're going to start to move out of this pose and end the class. So I want you to, if you've got your legs up in the air or up on the wall, you're going to start to bring the legs back down. If you're against the wall, just walk your feet down. And you're going to want to push yourself away slowly from the wall so that you've got some room to put your legs. And bring yourself to lay on one side, resting your head on your lower arm, keeping the eyes closed. And one last time, just feel any sensations happening in the body. You may notice some tingling going on in the feet and in the legs. That's a result, yes, of your chi, and your blood was going in the opposite direction. It was giving your heart a little bit of a break. On your next exhale, start to push yourself up off of the mat. Keep the eyes closed and come to find a seated position on the mat, cross-legged, Sukhasana, easy pose, crisscross applesauce. And we're going to end the class by circling the arms up overhead on an inhale. Hands will meet in prayer. And then on an exhale, we're going to bring the hands down to heart center as we chant one big loud Om. All right? And I want you to feel the sensations, the vibrations happening in the body as you as you chant that Om. All right, let's do it together. Inhale, arms up. exhale. Keeping the eyes closed, bow your chin to your chest, forehead to fingertips, and thank yourself for making it to your mat, for prioritizing yourself, your health, your healing, and your well-being. And then gently bow your upper body down toward the ground, forehead towards ground, and thank Mother Earth Gaia for supporting your experience, for allowing you to thrive off of her resources and her energy. And then perhaps thank any higher powers that you may have. Thank Spirit. Thank any guides, angels, anybody, God, Allah, Buddha, Bodhisattvas, whomever. And then bring your body back up. And when you feel ready, gently, slowly, open up the eyes.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed this practice. I really genuinely hope that this practice helped to alleviate some anxiety and at least give you a break from those anxious thoughts for an hour or so. I hope that you take anything that you've learned into the rest of your day, into your life. Remember, you can always come back to this practice whenever you need it. And again, if you want to check in with me and see what else I'm up to, you can always find me on Instagram at Alicia Hurley. And if you are feeling called to want to explore working with me on a one-to-one basis, you can always check out my coaching program. And if you want to learn more about it, you can see the description for ways to get in contact with me. All right. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. I hope you're doing as well as you possibly can be. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for being here. Namaste.